Not sure if anybody's in here yet, but good morning, everybody. We're just going to give a few minutes to let everyone else join, and we'll get started shortly. Okay. All right, why don't we kick this thing off? Hello, everybody. Welcome to Trumbull Tech's end of year wrap up webinar. My name is Aaron Sullivan. I'm joined today by Elmer, my colleague and friend.
Good morning. Nice to see everyone. Welcome to this Trumbull Tech cybersecurity webinar.
Today we're going to be going over a couple of things. So, yeah, let's get our introductions out of the way. Like I said, name's Aaron Sullivan. I'm a systems engineer with Trumbull Tech. I currently hold a CompTIA A+ certification. And like I said, I'm joined by Elmer here. He's our senior security engineer. He has many more shiny certifications than I do. Not sure how happy I am to have our certifications next to each other on the same slide, but whatever, I'll let it slide. Today's agenda, we're going to be going over some end of the year stuff and going to be sort of bringing the year to the close in terms of a security standpoint, and then going into 2026 with our correct goals in mind and being prepared for the next year. So yeah, let's just jump right in. So the biggest thing in 2025 that we saw at Trumbull by far is a massive increase in phishing scams, and they are AI powered phishing scams. We've talked a lot about AI in the past. I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing about it, but it's getting good. It's getting smart and it's getting harder to detect. So it's very important to be aware of this as a current threat right now. It is more difficult to tell when something is a real person or a robot. I mean, we all see how good AI is getting. It's able to mimic real conversations, writing styles, and also the sheer number of messages they can create in only a couple of seconds can be pretty overwhelming for most infrastructures. We at Trumbull recommend that you keep an eye out for things that say like, tomorrow this needs to be taken care of. Here's this invoice, it's overdue. You got to get this done now. Anything that sounds like urgency or emergency probably is best to verify before you start hitting the big red button. And we recommend verification by phone is the best way to go. You get an email or a text message from a company that's asking for something from you, call them. Do a quick Google search too can sometimes be enough to clear any doubts you have left over about whether or not it's real or fake. Sometimes you can tell. For example, I just got a text message from another state that I used to live in the other day that was telling me about my car registration. I did a quick Google search, confirmed that state does not send out text message for anything to do with car registration. So quick little searches like that can save you a lot of time and headache. So a couple things we want to talk about, reason why we're talking about it right now. A lot of people tend to think that this time of year, everything's going to get quiet this time of year. I'm sure nothing's going to go wrong. Everyone's going to be celebrating holidays. Not everybody celebrates Christmas the same way we all do. Right now, this time of year, we get an increase in phishing scams quite a lot. Towards the end of the year here, we begin to forget things that we set aside throughout the whole year. Everyone's on vacation. There's a lot going on. This is a very vulnerable time for many companies. It's important to stay vigilant 24/7, all year round, 365 days, even holidays, because we've seen major, Elmer, you can keep me truthful here. We've seen major data breaches happen on 4th of July weekends and Halloween and every holiday is a very important vector for things like this.
Bad guys love holidays because the IT guys are at home.
Yep. Yep. Sipping our pina coladas.
So really it's a good point because the bad guys do love these holidays. Everyone's distracted and cybersecurity tends to take a back seat to packages and shopping and getting ready for the holidays. But as we get ready to approach a new year and we start thinking about maybe New Year's resolutions and promising to do things a little better, then this is a really good time to start doing some things around cybersecurity just to improve your situation. This list is a great starting point. Going through and removing old accounts for former employees and vendors is a great place. You don't want abandoned, orphaned accounts with credentials and access into the system sitting out there, especially if it's an administrative account. Reviewing anything, any device that has an admin login, any user accounts that have admin privileges, and make sure there's no default passwords in place and that you have strong credentials guarding those accounts. Unused mailboxes, integrations, and API keys. We're going to talk a little bit about how those figure into breaches. The bad guys really love to get a hold of a mailbox because they can control then the flow of messages in and out of your environment, and in some cases hide things from you so you can't see what's going on, and even take over communications in your name. We talked a little bit about passwords. Passwords are imperfect, but they're still the main gatekeeper to protect your critical systems. So make sure you're using strong passwords. And by the way, don't reuse passwords. So make sure that critical systems, and when I use the word systems, I'm talking about any account that's protecting valuable information, bank accounts, credit card accounts, your IRS account, accounts that have access into the network where sensitive information resides. All of those are critical accounts. And you need to really make sure that you're not using passwords on those accounts that you may have used in public areas like social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, online shopping accounts. Those passwords that you've used online probably exist in the bad guy's database. So you don't want to give them easy access to log into your bank account because you used the same password that you used on LinkedIn. And then update your devices. Go through and make sure that firmware is updated, that patches are applied. It's really critical. The vendors work hard to make sure that holes that get discovered get fixed. But all that work is for nothing if you're not applying patches and keeping those things up to date. So, and the reason that's so important to keep up with that, are kind of the examples that we have in front of us. And, the bad guys continue to evolve, to mature with all of the latest technological updates. Aaron mentioned that AI is becoming a big tool in their arsenal, and that's really pretty frightening because it used to be you could kind of smell when an email was wrong. You know what I mean? But AI has taken that out of the picture. And so you really have to have double verification. And MFA has been a key weapon in that, like multi-factor authentication, where you have to not only log in with a password that but you have to provide some sort of key or code or text code gets sent to you on your phone. So there's a thing you possess that gives you a secondary level access. Well, the bad guys are taking advantage of that. The users, for one thing, are just getting a little overwhelmed with MFA fatigue, where every single thing you do needs 4 levels of login, and by the time you're done, you're 20 minutes into getting access to the environment. So it's difficult, and yet it's still critical that you stay on top of that and that you play by those rules, because it's just too easy for the bad guys to get in and even take over in some cases uh, sessions that are active. So it's critical that you do implement MFA on all of your critical accounts and follow those rules as much as you can. The OAuth app consent is another leading problem. Microsoft Office 365, everybody uses that. It's a cloud based environment. And that cloud environment provides lots of integration options. You can connect applications to it to share information. You can connect filters. You can connect other sorts of applications to that. And once an application's been given access in the background, it can pull data and do things that you're not aware of anymore. And if that's a malicious application, then they can really get right in and take over your environment. So it's possible for an app to take over your office environment just because it's been given OAuth consent. So reviewing that kind of information, going through Microsoft surfaces all that information. So you can go through the environment, you can look to see if there are other entities or accounts that have been given access to that. But you have to do that. So someone needs to be knowledgeable enough to sit down and work through the, say, for instance, an Office 365 environment to see what applications have been granted OAuth access. But the bad guys are leveraging this technology and they're taking advantage of people every day using it. So it's important for you to guard yourself against that. Email compromise, it continues to be probably the bad guy's biggest weapon. Um, Given a percentage game, if they send out so many emails, then they're 100% guaranteed somebody is going to click somewhere along the line and they're going to get a response. So it's a really favorite attack mechanism for them. And because of Office 365, it's possible for the bad guys, if they gain entry, for instance, if they get access to a password that gets them into an Office 365 account, they can write rules in there that control where the messages go. So a bad guy could rewrite your Office 365 rules to forward all incoming mail to them and hide it from you. So they see all your mail and you don't see any. And so that kind of mature capability is really just a standard part and parcel of the bad guy's toolkit these days. So it's really important to, one, be aware that they're operating on that level. And two, if you're using solutions like Office 365, I recommend having an expert take a look at that environment to look for holes and vulnerabilities, because there are so many places where they can hide. And then cybersecurity awareness, top of mind, right? Just knowing that the bad guys are working hard to get you. You know, this is that time of year where businesses face distractions, people face distractions, your mind is in a million places, tax season's coming up, you're thinking of 100 things. And when you get that email that says, here's your free Amazon gift card, and it's in December, are you going to click, or are you going to investigate that a little bit, think twice about it, look at the URL by hovering over some of the links, and make a decision about whether that's a safe email or not? Just remember that obvious things, Walmart gift cards, Amazon gift cards, if we're from the IRS and your tax refund's going to be held up if you don't respond and provide us an update to your social security number. We're your bank and your password's locked and we need you to log in here and reset your password. So that's low hanging fruit for the bad guys, especially as we go through this busy time of year and the tax season and the shopping season, they're going to be very aware of where your head's at this time of year, and they're going to be exercising creative tactics to take advantage of that and get you off your guard. So um, these tips that we've talked about here, by the way, are free and anybody can do them. So everything that we've talked about, that I've talked about here so far, all of those suggestions and recommendations, you can do these things right now today and they'll cost you nothing. And collectively, they'll have a dramatic impact on your cybersecurity posture. So with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Aaron and let him kind of finish up things.
Yeah, and before we move on from the slide, it looks like we have a question about how to scan Office 365 for these security gaps. It is very easy to do, and Trumbull Tech actually offers a free consultation. So get in touch with us if you're interested in getting your environment scanned. We can point out some of these security gaps in your infrastructure. All right, so that is 2025. Moving forward into 2026, what are we looking to do? How do we take what we've learned over the last year and apply it to our next year in business? Well, the question is, what do you want to do with your 2026? What are your goals? Are you looking for faster service, faster turnaround for your clients? Investigate automating repetitive tasks. Highly recommend it. We don't have time for some of the simplest problems in our day-to-day work life. Use AI. We've had many webinars in the past from Trumbull about using AI in your workspace. There are many intelligent places where you can leverage that resource. Refer to those if you have any questions or post them here. Are you looking for extra growth? Investigate some cloud tools. These are great tools right now for the SMB world. We're all using M365. Azure is a real thing. It's there. It's on your M365. Learn what it does. Take a look at what you can do with Exchange Admin Center, things like that. You leverage what you have. You pay for an M365 license, use it. Better security policies, investigate backups, turn on MFA. I know Elmer spoke about it earlier. No one likes MFA. No one has fun putting in authenticator codes on their Microsoft Authenticator app. No one enjoys that, but it's incredibly strong. And I think that is kind of a repetitive pattern in our life, right? The things that we like to do the least tend to be the most secure. So look into that. And as well, take a look at your hardware. Um, because this past year, a lot of devices are going to be missing some pretty important security patches. I know we've spoke about this before and you've probably heard about it. Windows is moving on from Windows 11, from Windows 10 to Windows 11. And if you haven't updated or upgraded your software to Windows 11, I highly recommend finding a way to do that. If you need to replace that device because it's not compatible with Windows 11, I also highly recommend doing that. These are critical steps that we can take in our next year to make sure that we're maintaining our infrastructure security. And what can you do today? Elmer talked about how a lot of the things we're talking about in this webinar they're free. These are simple, quick, easy wins that we can do to help shore up our security, and they're big effects too. I already spoke about MFA for critical accounts. These are admin accounts, admin level accounts. If you are part of the C-suite of your company, or you're an executive, you would say, or even someone as a senior sales position, if you have any power in your organization as far as your accounts go, have multi-factor authentication turned on for that. It is so easy to get access to that account through a simple password and run amok inside your tenant. Another thing that we recommend, testing backups. A lot of people sometimes will purchase a backup solution and they'll see a green light, they'll see a check mark and say, yep, this device is backed up, our M365 is backed up. Give it a test, confirm. There's absolutely nothing wrong with walking through scenarios, and you can get your team together so that everybody can practice it together and make it a team learning experience. Your backups are only as good as you can access them. So if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to the moment where you need a backup, then I don't really consider you to have ever backed up your information in the first place. And getting onto that team building, team training subject, security awareness training, training your staff on spotting phishing emails. This is pretty valuable stuff. You can build the tallest wall, we say in cybersecurity. You can build the biggest castle, the best cannons, the best catapults, but you can't do anything if they lower the drawbridge. If you let attackers through your walls by clicking that link in that email or going to that website and entering in your information, the walls do nothing. The soldiers do nothing. It meant nothing because the drawbridge was lowered. And going into next year, lastly, we definitely recommend scheduling Q1 tech reviews. You should be scheduling quarterly tech reviews with your IT provider, preferably 4 times a year in each quarter, to make sure that you're staying up to date. These things change quickly, and it's important to stay on top of it.
And to be helpful, if you want to give that QR code that you see in the top right hand corner a scan, that'll get you a free checklist to help you address some of these issues.
Absolutely. Nope. Okay, this is our question section. Please take a look at some of these QR codes if you enjoyed this. Schedule a consultation with Trumbull Tech. We'll take a look at your inventory and see what we can do for you. We have another webinar coming up in January to continue on with our program here. And follow us on LinkedIn, please. We'd love to get more people watching these. I've got a couple of questions that were passed to me. Let's see, Elmer, if I put you on the spot.
Mm-hmm.
If we've got a question from someone saying, if I work with all cloud platforms in my business, am I secure?
Great question. Really a cloud platform is just somebody else's computer. It's connected to the internet, but it's a server and it's got hard disks and it's storing data. And so it's just someone else's computer. Whether or not you're secure because you're using all cloud platforms, the answer to that question depends entirely on the vendor stack. Which vendors are you using? And you almost have to look at each individual vendor and ask that question, are they secure? The supply chain question has become a big question ever since really the SolarWinds breach of 2021. The issue of what happens when your vendor gets attacked, and even worse when it's a vendor that's running your computers, then you're really in a mess, because how do you fix the problem when the guy that fixes the problem is the problem? And that was what happened in that situation. So when the tool that you're using to run the computers is the tool that's infected, how do you correct the problem? And so it's really some lessons learned from that event that caused us to look at this issue of supply chain vendor risk. And it's a complicated question. I'm not going to beat around the bush on it. Think about how many vendors you have. Are you using Intuit for Quicken, Microsoft for messaging? You're buying computers from Hewlett Packard or Dell, and you have maybe other line of business third-party products from small companies that are in niche markets, and each one of those is a vulnerability entry point. So in order to properly address this question, you have to look at each vendor that you're doing business with, really whether they're cloud-based or whether you're running their software on your local computers. It's the same question of my supply chain vulnerability. And it's you have to address each one of those vendors. How do you address that with the vendor can be a complicated question. Sometimes they can point you to documentation on compliance steps that they take and frameworks that they comply with. Sometimes vendors are known to be breached, and then not everyone is aware of that. Microsoft has announced that they were breached in the SolarWinds breach and have never been able to fully eradicate the bad guys from their network as a result. So we sort of have to consider Microsoft's own network, Azure, Office 365, as a compromised environment. And you have to take all the extra steps we've talked about through all of this conversation, especially when we talked about scanning Office 365 for vulnerabilities. It's kind of critical because at this stage, Microsoft's publicly announced that they're compromised and they can't do anything about it. So the supply chain is a big risk. As business owners, you really need to evaluate that on kind of an individual vendor kind of a basis. And I don't believe that whether it's a cloud solution or a local install solution has anything to do with it. You can be compromised just as easily either way.
Yep. Yep. So inherently, just because it's cloud-based doesn't wouldn't suggest it's more secure than anything else. There are other factors in that environment that you have to take into consideration.
Yeah, in some
Yep.
cases less secure because maybe the only thing protecting it is a password that's sitting in the cloud somewhere,
Yep.
which is not great.
Well, we got a few more minutes here. I think I got another question, and I'm pretty sure I can handle this one. We got a question that says, "What's the best multi-factor authenticator and password manager that you recommend?" As far as multi-factor authentication goes, personally, I use the on my phone the Microsoft Authenticator app. I don't think there's too much difference between the other different authenticator apps you can use. That'll come down to personal preference. But as far as password managers that I recommend, I would recommend any password manager, especially if you're not using a password manager. Personally, we at Trumbull recommend Bitwarden. I use it every single day. Bitwarden works. It does what it's supposed to. I've also heard good things about, I think, LastPass, if that's something that someone uses in the audience today. But like I said, it's more important that you use any password manager, especially if you're not using one. Those are, in this day and age, password managers are the way to go. Too many people in the SMB space, we find, still have one password for everything. The same password for their Microsoft login is the password for their bank account login. I mean, gotta change that up. It hurts. Don't get me wrong. It hurts to take a look at your passwords and go account by account by account and change them. But a password manager can help you save those passwords and break it down into one master password for you and make your day a lot easier. Looks like we got one last question. We might be able to sneak this in. If all of my data is in the cloud with these platforms, is it automatically backed up? If they get compromised, how does that affect my data? Well, I can certainly answer the first part. Just because it's in the cloud does not mean it's automatically backed up, especially if you're talking about things like your email messages that are saved in your inbox. Yes, they're stored in the cloud, but I don't think any cybersecurity professional would call that backed up.
Well, I think when you read probably your license agreements and your customer service agreements with your cloud vendors, you'll probably find that it's your obligation to back up your data and
Yep.
that they probably explicitly don't back up your data.
Yeah,
So,
and they'll tell you that in writing to protect themselves.
yeah.
So.
So you're always, I would, if I, especially if I'm a business owner, I just assume I'm responsible for my data. It's a critical piece to the, continued operation of my business, and I would treat it just like that.
Yep. All right. Well, I think that was our last question. We're just about wrapped for time here. We got a minute and a half left. I want to thank everybody for coming and attending and listening us yap at you, and look forward to our next webinar once again coming up January 15th, 2026, Tech Kickoff, Building a Secure, Streamlined IT Strategy. Thanks, everybody. I hope you have a great day.
Bye, everyone.